My name is Bob Obrata, and I'm the Executive Director for the Tennessee College Access and Success Network. I have worked in college access for 30 years and have been helping students and families figure out how to pay for college in that entire time. And given our current new reality with the COVID virus, I know that there's probably a lot of people out there who are trying to either figure out how to pay for college now or have had some dramatic changes in their financial circumstances that make it difficult to continue to pay for college. So I thought I would start with some presentations that might help to provide some guidance on what you can do to potentially get some additional financial aid that might make it a little bit easier for you to keep attending. So let's get to it. As you may know, I mean, in a normal world, paying for college is a pretty straightforward process. People fill out the what we call the free application for federal student aid, also known as the FAFSA. It has a deadline of April 15th, which we're currently just past right now, though you can still fill out the FAFSA. There's still aid available. And the financial aid form is based on something we call prior year. And what does that mean? Well, that means that for this upcoming fall semester, the 2020 school year, FAFSA is capturing your income from 2018. And the reason we do this, just so everybody knows, is that people's financial situations don't change dramatically much. And so this is a way to kind of streamline the process and get the FAFSA completed early so that people can get their aid award early. So in a regular situation, this tends to work. However, given what is currently happening, that might not necessarily be the case. So people fill out their financial aid forms, then the colleges give you an award based upon what the FAFSA determines to be your estimated family contribution. And then you end up paying for college, and there's a variety of different ways that can happen. We'll talk a little bit about that too. But we're not in a normal world. We're in our current COVID world, and so for a lot of students and families, the financial aid form might not reflect your current financial reality. What was in 2018 might not necessarily be what is occurring right now in 2020. For example, somebody in your family or you may have lost your employment, or maybe you've had your hours cut. You may be experiencing medical bills or other extreme spikes in expenses. And I hope that this has not happened to anybody, but there might have been the death of a parent or guardian, and so all of a sudden your financial situation and how you paid for college might be dramatically different. Many students might need have emergency needs like food or housing, technology, or access to Wi-Fi. It might be a situation where the student was using free Wi-Fi and now does not have access to Wi-Fi at all. And so one of the things that you definitely need to do if you're in any of these situations is reach out to the financial aid offices at the institution that you're either attending or planning attending and ask for some help. So what is happening and being discussed? So colleges currently are ramping up emergency funds for immediate needs, and different colleges have different amounts of emergency funds, but there may be funds available right now on your college campus, so that's something that you definitely need to be checking out. Colleges are refunding or discounting for room and board since students left, somewhere around the spring break period. It's possible that you will get some type of refund or discount for not being on campus. So definitely make sure that you're paying attention to what your college or university is doing with regards to this. Uh, Across the country, advocates are asking for an increase to Pell Grants, student loans, everything from delaying payments to suspending interest. All of these different types of things are being looked at. This is still early days, though, so know that there are still some things to come, and we'll just have to pay attention as it comes along. So let's get into financial aid offices and how they run. As you probably know or are going to currently experience, financial aid forms run on forms. You have the financial aid form, which, as you know, collects all kinds of different income information on you. You may have to go through a process called verification, which basically is a collection of all of the income data that you put on the financial aid form plus additional forms. There's all kinds of other forms, general forms, fee waiver forms. You may have to submit tax returns. You may have to submit your W 2s. So, financially, what you just need to understand and remember is that financial aid offices run on forms, and this is no different. What we're going to talk about are some forms called special circumstance forms. And there might be new forms if you're looking for emergency funds that the colleges have created. They're probably very similar to the special circumstances forms, but you need to realize that there might be a whole separate application process for emergency funds versus what we're going to talk about today, which is the special circumstance form. So, what is a special circumstance form? The special circumstance form, and every college has some version of this, is a form that allows financial aid counselors to use something called professional judgment. And we'll talk a little bit more about that in a second. But the idea behind the form is to is to give the families an opportunity to provide a narrative around what is a more accurate reflection of your current family's financial situation. And what do I mean by that? Well, again, if you think back to the FAFSA, we were looking at 2018 income data, and now that this is the new reality, that situation might change, or has changed. And so this gives you an opportunity to explain how that situation has changed and lay that out for the financial aid officers so that they can consider using professional judgment to make adjustments to your aid. And this is why this form becomes really important. It does require additional documentation. So if you have one thing you should definitely think about doing is, if you haven't already, work on your current tax returns, because that might be something that will be requested in order for the financial aid offices to make the adjustment. Even if you haven't done your tax returns, if you have W-2s or any notifications that your situation has changed, for example, if you have a letter from your employer that is notifying you of termination of your employment, or anything that has adjusted your hours, anything that will provide evidence that your situation has changed, are documents that you should collect. If you're on, with your employer, if your employer said, "Hey, I'm going to," but maybe you're a restaurant worker in the service industry, and your boss has told you, "Hey, I'm going to cut your hours, and your hours are going to be cut from now through the summer." Maybe they just told you that. Well, go back to your boss and ask them if you could get something in writing that you could then share with the financial aid office. So all of this information will be important in terms of giving the financial aid counselors the opportunity to use their professional judgment. Just another thing about the special circumstances form, it might be called something else. That's just kind of a general term. It's most likely going to be called special circumstances, but it might also be called something like a revision request form. And so you just have to kind of look around. If you contact the financial aid office, they're going to know exactly what you're talking about if you say special circumstances form. And they'll at least direct you to where that form might be online, or if they have those in the office. It might not be easily found on the college's website. This is a form amongst many forms, and so you sometimes have to go on a search around the college website to find it. But know that all financial aid offices have this, and if you contact them, either directly on, via email or phone. They should at least be able to point you into the right direction of where this form exists. So, what you'll need to do once you get the form is, well, first off, a point about the form itself. The form might be 6 or 7 pages long, and don't be intimidated by it. It's usually broken out based upon different circumstances. So, for example, one section of the form might be about that you lost employment, or one section of the form might be that you've had extreme expenses. So it's 6 pages long, yes, but you might only be asked to fill out a certain section of that form, and the rest might not apply to you. So don't panic when you see a 6 page form. Uh, and when you're filling this form out, it's really important to remember that you're talking to a person. Again, this is about professional judgment. So professional judgment is that you're working with the professional in the financial aid office, and that person is trying to make a determination as to whether or not your income circumstances have changed enough so that they can make a determination and give you additional aid. And they're basing that upon their professional expertise. So always remember, when you're filling out these forms, when you're talking to the financial aid office, you're talking to a person, you're trying to explain your situation, they're trying to help you. Don't get frustrated with them. They are bound by rules and regulations, and they're just trying to get as much information as they possibly can to help you. So, when you get this form, I mean, you're going to realize that there's very little space to tell your story, but you can always add additional pages to the form to tell your story. And I always suggest to people that they write a letter, that explains their circumstances. This gives the financial aid officer an opportunity to understand your situation a little bit better, and then they can also help guide you to determine what type of documentation that they might need that you haven't provided, and just make the whole process easier for you. Um, but regardless of what your situation is, I can tell you that these things are definitely going to be on the plate, so you might as well start putting them together now. Um, you're going to want to create a list of monthly income and expenses changes, and you want to do this in a way that makes it easy for the financial aid officer to see the difference. So, for example, if you have a list of your monthly bills, and that you have, and that includes everything from your standard bills like power and internet service, your mortgage or rent, any types of general monthly expenses that you have like that, to your food bills, just kind of an average of what your food bill might be per month. So you list out what your monthly your income and expenses are, and then next to that, you want to list out how things have changed. So what happened? What was it like before, and what is it like now? That's really what you're trying to get to. So if you have had these major expenses or income variations, you want the financial aid officer to be able to see, here's my new reality. Here's how much less I'm living on. Here's how my expenses changed. And you want to make it as easy as possible. So set up one column that says, here's what it was like in 2019, and here's what it's like now in 2020, given my new circumstances, so that they can just kind of look at the math on the chart and realize that, yes, you're living off much less income, or you're having these major expenses that has made your situation dramatically change. This is what we're trying to get to. And then anything that you have that is, as you list all these things out, you have to remember you have to collect any and all documentations and dates. So if you had a loss of employment, you want to know exactly when, you want to document that the person lost their employment, but then you also want to make sure that you are showing what day that happened, because the financial aid officer is going to have to go back to the exact moment in time that you lost your employment and look at your financial situation from that moment. So, pay stubs. If your hours have been cut back, collect the pay stubs for when that started, so again that you can show that the income has dramatically changed. Medical expenses that are not paid by insurance, clearly this is something that you should lay out. And then other major unanticipated expenses. Given everything that's going on, I'm sure that there's a million things that I haven't thought of that are additional unanticipated expenses that you've had, that are unique to your situation. Well, you want to capture that, and you want to document it, and you want to have a date on it. Those are the three most important things. But know this, if you're worried about the future, but you haven't lost your job yet, or your hours haven't been cut yet, reality really hasn't occurred. And financial aid officers only deal in the current reality. So you cannot, the financial aid office cannot make changes unless something has actually happened. So uh, you may be sitting there saying, okay, in July, it's very likely that my job might be, cut back, or the hours of my job might be cut back. But until that actually happens, the financial aid office cannot do anything. So just know that you can be doing things like collecting all of the documentation that you might need, but know that financial aid offices won't be able to do anything until it's occurred. Small income changes will not affect your aid. We're only talking about significant changes for special circumstances. Just because you lost a couple of $1,000 last month doesn't mean that if you document it that the financial aid office can give you a couple $1,000s more. What we're talking about is a significant change, and so it's something that has made your situation go from one extreme to another. Um, if you've had like a short term drop in a couple $1,000s over last month, this might be a situation where the college might be able to leverage some of its emergency funds to help you through a rough patch, but they're not going to be able to provide dramatic changes to your financial aid award, with just these kind of one-time losses in income. Any economic stimulus income that you have also has to be considered. So let's say if you lost $1,200 last month, but you're going to get $1,200 this month. Again, this is a situation where the special circumstances form might not be the right form for you to be thinking about filling out, because your income really hasn't changed. It just had a bump in when that $1,200 came in. So we don't know what reality really looks like yet. You might want to be first in line, but you don't want to jump the gun too much here. So let's say if you just had your hours cut back for 5 to 10 hours for the last couple of weeks, but it might be likely that in a couple of weeks you might lose your job. Well, you don't want to fill out the form if until you kind of have a good understanding of what your new financial circumstance might be. Just make sure that you're collecting all this information, and then when you realize that this is what your new reality is, that's when you're going to want to fill out the form. Collect what you'll need though, and document. I cannot emphasize that enough. Making sure that you have dates, and everything attached to it, so that the financial aid offices can recalculate your income, given the new circumstances. You might also, if you've had to tap into your savings account, you might want to document that as well, so that you can show that if you had $5,000 sitting there before, but you had to use it to get through last month, that might be a significant enough change in your circumstance that they might be able to do something, or again, at least emergency funds. So, final few tidbits. If you have problems with these forms, again, I've done hundreds of these forms for students, and it helps to have somebody around it can help walk you through it. So school counselors quite often have worked with these forms before. There's a lot of college-based, community-based college access organizations that you can reach out to. Number one, though, is you need to get on the phone and contact your college's financial aid office. One way or another, they're going to want to hear from you if you're going to be filling out this special circumstance form, and they are your front line of support and helping walk you through it. Um, they are there to help, and so definitely that's your first point of contact. Fill out the forms like you are talking to a person, because you are, and realize that yes, it's a very frustrating situation, and remember that these financial aid officers are probably dealing with hundreds and hundreds of people who are in frustrating situations just like you are. So, helping them, just being positive with them, does help. And emergency funds, might take a little bit of time. Uh, but it may take 3 to 5 weeks to get an answer about emergency funds might take a little bit of time, but it might take a lot longer period of time to get an answer about next year. So just know that there's going to be hundreds of these forms that are going to be being submitted by students and families, and the financial aid offices are going to be overloaded a little bit. And just realize that as long as you are making sure that you have all of your documentation in, just give them a moment to look to see about next year and what could possibly happen. Finally, many of you may know about payment plans, but there are college and university payment plan options. You should always explore those. Each college has different types of payment plan options, but if you hadn't used one in the past, it might be a way to kind of spread out the payments and make it a little bit easier to pay what you owe. So make sure that when you're contacting financial aid, you might want to ask about payment plan options as well. So again, this is just a start, just to kind of give you an idea of one simple way to start thinking about how you might be able to pay for college next year, or leverage emergency funds even this year. Reach out to your access organizations, your school counselors. You can always tweet at me at Bob_O22. I'd be happy to answer your questions, and send me a direct message. Happy to answer it offline too. I hope this helps. Everybody